This is the first in a couple of videos where we're looking at the meniscus calculation engine uh, web-based configuration tool. So this is the URL up here, webclient.meniscus.co.uk. So this is used for configuring the data, which is going to be the first video, the setup and how you configure MCE to do all your calculations and to take any raw data and process it into calculated data. We're going to have one which is just looking at analytics, which is a range of graphs that we've got available within the configuration tool. And then the third will be looking at the widgets. And to be honest, the widgets are a lot more, they're better than the analytics graphs. And we quite like the widgets, and they're very powerful tools to be able to use to create your own dashboard. So before you get on, I just want to flag up that on our website, meniscus.co.uk, if you go to the developers section, under the MCE API documentation, you've got quite a lot of data here on the API. So we have the whole of a comprehensive API behind MCE, so you can get everything, you can post it, you can create your own methods using the API, you can do everything within the API that you want to. And there are also some links, some core concepts which I suggest you read to try to get an understanding of MCE, because it's got some of the terminology, some what we call groups and we call subgroups, and the data and all the items and the item types. So this item type is quite a key concept to understand within MCE. So I'd advise you go and spend a little bit of time having a look at that. There's quite a lot of data there. So if we go back to our meniscus client, what we've done, I've just logged in using an MCE demo username, so that's my username over here. So this top bar basically is showing me this is the company that I have access to. So in this case, I've just got a company which is called Demo Sites, and that demo site has got two sites. So that company Demo Sites has got two sites. One's called Real Time Electricity. So this takes data from a current cost bridge that we've configured. We rewrote the code for the bridge, and this is an Arduino, and it uploads data directly to our web page, into the MCE backend, sorry, not to a web page, and it's processed in here. And then we've also got one on a wastewater treatment plant. But really today we're going to look at the real-time electricity site. And then over here we've got some profile information for the user. So this is just a few personalized settings, and this is where you can change your password, and very importantly, you can get your API key for using the widgets, so that you'll need that later on. So that's where you get the API key. So just on the actual website itself, left hand side is all the selections, what you can select and create and add. Every time you see this API link, this basically gives you an example of the API call, and you can click on that and it'll show you the data in a new URL. So all of this website is being built using API links, and so that's the actual link used here. This one adds fields into particular parameters, so there's more parameters that you can see within this view. Oh sorry, here's my select field. So if we want to, we can see user key 1, user key 2. We can add those fields in, and that adds those in here. And you can, so that's basically what you're doing there, is you're selecting fields and adding them in so that you can see more of them. So this is my site details. The company's got nothing really. This is just, again, some of the fields within the company. Where you've got this thing saying add company, you can click on that if you want to add a company. If you've only got read access, you won't be able to do that. In fact, if you won't be able to do that generally, because unless you've got specific access into MCE. So again, site, you can add sites, you can add email addresses. So this is where we've got emailers running and generating. When some of the items calculate, they can generate alerts, and these will email out to people on this particular list. So this is how you control the email lists. Actually, probably at this stage it'll be useful just to view the structure of the data. So if you click on that view structure, click to expand, and it's just going to download the data at the moment. So what we've got here is you've got showing you both the two sites, and then if you click on it, so this is a company level. So this is the inherent data structure within MCE. So you've got company, then you've got the site. Then these are groups. So if we look in the reporting group, we've then got subgroups of daily, half hour, real time. And if I click on the plus on the real time, these are the items. So these are all the items where we are bringing in real-time electricity. So that's data that's being imported into MCE, and basically that's all the meters that are being imported, and then everything else from there is being calculated as a consequence of this data being imported in. So all the other calculations effectively hang off these raw items. So it's just an easy way to understand how the data is structured. So what we can look at then is if you go into group, again, these are your groups. So this little pencil button allows you to edit. So I can edit my reporting group. There's actually, as you see, not very much there. And then you've got a plus and a tick and a cross. If you tick it, you'll save it. But this is a read-only access, so I'm not going to try and create anything at the moment. And if you hit this cross, you delete it. So bear in mind that if you do delete, you delete completely. So be careful using that delete button. So that basically gives me my overall groups. So I can create any number of groups, and you can add groups. Just click on there, add the group name, add a user key. You don't need to use a key. The red asterisk means that it's a required field. So you just need a group name to create it, and then you can add it in. You can export to Excel, and then these little filter buttons allow you to filter data. It's not necessary when you've got not very many groups or subgroups. So these are my subgroups. So at the top I have my list of my groups again. So if I go down to reporting, these are my three groups. So if you remember here, this is what it looks like. So these are my three groups: daily, half hour, real time. So again, I can use this button here to add another subgroup into this. And if what I want to do is to be able to change. You can see that this basically down here, this is the list of all the items that are in this particular, have been allocated into this daily group. So if I click on the half hour one, I get those lists which correspond to those items. And again, if I just click on let's just shut those two down, and those are the ones in the real-time list. So to add another list, all I have to do is just click whichever ones I want to add and save, and it'll add those items into my subgroups, and then they'll display on this data structure over here. And you can see later we really use just these groups and subgroups just for grouping data, just so it makes it a little bit easier to select data for reports later on if you want to do it. So they have no inherent data structure. They're just for data structure. They don't have any calculation purpose. So those are groups. So we've talked about groups, talked about subgroups. So now we sort of get into the nitty-gritty of MCE, which is all the items. So this is going to be a little bit more complicated. So this is where you really need to understand some of the core concepts. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in and look at one of the basic meters. So this is electricity use channel 1. So this was, if you remember, this is one of my raw meters. So this is data that is being imported into MCE. Now there is a lot of data and information, so I can't go through in detail in this. Suffice to say, these are all the types of types of items. So each one of these calculates the data in a different way. It's not appropriate to go through these at this moment. Suffice to say that this one is raw data coming in. It's an absolute value, meaning that it has an absolute value at a moment in time. So it's aperiodic. So you can put in data at whatever frequency you want to, and it'll work. This is start dates, display units. We can assign costs to anything. We can convert. So this actually is, so the raw data for this particular item is going in watts, and then we've got a conversion that does a half hour watt to kilowatt hour conversion. So the calculated data for this item is stored in kilowatt hours, but the raw data is stored in watts. So in the calculation tab, we've got any calculated data. So this is where you can create. You've got an editor that you can create your calculations. So you've got a whole heap of calculations in here, which again I'm not going to go in trying to talk you through. This is all of the there's a lot of stuff in here that you can create these calculations. So effectively, every time you create a calculation in MCE, you're referencing another meter or another raw value and using it to do the calculations. So you can then check all those calculations, and there's a syntax checker here which will check the syntax of your calculation against the calculation engine in the on the servers and tell you if you've got an error within your syntax. These high limits and low calcs, these are high alert limits, so these can be calculations, or they can, in this case, they're just values. So if your value goes about 0.15 in terms of kilowatt hours, so this would be my calculated data, it would generate a warning for me. And if it goes below 0.05, it can also do the same. In the advanced setting, really the key points here is this is aggregating data. So actually this data comes in every 2 minutes. We aggregate it into 30-minute periods. So this is the aggregation functionality. So these are the key aggregation periods that we have. So 30 minutes is what this particular calculation is geared to, and it's using an average. So it's bringing in watts, it's converting those into kilowatts, and it's averaging that data over the 30-minute period. So you get an averaged watts calculated into a kilowatt value. Set to 2 decimal places, and this is a very important, this is the value which is coming from, in our case, a current cost bridge. It's a bridge unit, and this is the data that's programmed into the bridge. And this, so when the bridge sends us data, we know that this particular code from the bridge is related to this particular item. So this is what we import on. So that's the importing methodology. I won't talk about disabling interpolated flags at this moment. These are all some of the more complex calculation offsets and delays that we're doing within the data. So this actually is delaying the data for half an hour. So even though we send up data every 2 minutes, we only calculate it every half an hour. So we have raw data available in real time, but we only do the calculations, all the relevant calculations, every half an hour, just for loading purposes. And then this is some of the load. So in here you can actually load in CSV files, and you can, or you can just yeah, it's really for loading CSV files manually. So really simply, that's a very, very fast overview of MCE. If you then look at, say, so actually if I go down to the next logical meter, which is the electricity use channel 1, half hour. So what this is doing, and I'll come back into the the data, is actually what we've got. We've got quite a complex calculation at the back end, which actually takes the real-time data and aggregates it automatically and populates it back into this meter. So this actually is showing half-hour electricity use. So we calculate the half-hour electricity use in the previous meter, and then we re-import it back into this meter. And that means we actually delete the raw data after 4 days, because otherwise it's such a huge volume of data at 2-minute intervals when we receive it. So that's electricity use channel 1. If I come and look at, say, right, my daily electricity use channel 1. So that's now, so the previous meter was half hourly electricity consumption. This is daily electricity use. The point here is to flag up, we've chosen this as a calculated item. So this is telling MCE that this item is going to be calculated from some other, either another calculated item or a raw data item. So if you go into the calculation, this is the calculation that's being applied. So this is basically saying that this is using electricity use channel 1 HH. So this is my half hour electricity use data, and it's using it for what's called today. Now today is actually a moment in time. So it's taking it from, if today was it's at now 9:30 it's 9:30 in the morning. So it'll take it from 9:30 in the morning from today to 9:30 in the morning to today plus 1. So actually what it's doing is continually looking forward. It's doing forward aggregation of data. A lot of the industry uses backward aggregation. Backward aggregation doesn't work very easily at all when you're looking at real-time electricity data, and we tend to use forward aggregation. And then this is basically summing this data set of that particular data. So this taking all that electricity, half hour electricity use for the last day, and it sums it over a day. So you're getting a continual rolling electricity use consumption for your day. and so that's what this do, and then it's going back. So basically it's constantly calculating the daily electricity use. So it calculates it every half hour, updates it for today, and then it's calculated it for yesterday. So that's what basically this calculation does. And so every time that this electricity use channel 1 HH changes, it will go and recalculate this. So everything's automatic behind the system. So if I go and check my syntax, that basically tells me that all my expressions are correct. I can go in here, and I can use again my calculation syntax checker to check some of the syntax, and there are examples in here of the syntax that you can use. So these are there's a bit of help on this system to help you set up calculations. So that's the key. So this is really the building blocks of the item. So the item structures. Targets are again, targets are more important. I think I've got. Let's just see if I've got targets on. Yeah. So I've got a target here. So what a target is, it's a yet another calculation. But basically it's a calculation that starts from a particular time, which is relevant to a particular item. So items have targets. So the idea is that you can say, right, this is my consumption profile over time, and every year I set a different target for my electricity use. So when you look at your data, you can then see my raw data for my meter, my calculated data, my target data, my cost data, my target cost data, and that's all displayed. All of that is associated to one particular item. So an item has a list of targets, and you can have as many targets as you want. And this basically will mean that from the 1st of October 2015, I'm setting a target. My expected consumption is going to be 21. So whereas my actual target will be changing, this will be giving me a flat line to say this is what I expect. So this is my expected consumption. And if I added another one in for the 1st of January 2020, then you'd have, it'll be 21 up until from the 1st of October 2015 up until the 1st of January 2020, and then it would drop down to my new value. So a target is a calculation that changes from a moment in time. So you can add targets just by clicking on this button. Units again, so all these ones in purple, these are standard ones that are global. So basically you can create your own units if you want, but we've got a lot of units already set up. So these are all the units which are already set up in MCE. So but if you really wanted to, you could create your own widget unit if you wanted to. Then we can go in and create costs. Now costs are effectively, you can create you're adding a cost in here. So I've got a cost of electricity, and there's always one called none, which is added just because otherwise it tends to cause an empty data set. So this is my cost here, and this is the cost values that I've got under here. So actually what this is doing, it's using another calculation to create my cost, and in this case it's using an electricity rate. There's an item called electricity rate, which you'll see if you come down to all items. There will be one called electricity rate somewhere there. So that will actually give me my electricity rate, and that's another calculation. So in MCE you can call calculations in costs. So you've got a huge ability to basically create any sort of calculation structure. So your costs can be calculations, your targets can be calculations, your high values can be calculations, your low values can be calculations, and then you've got your calculations themselves. So there's an awful lot of calculations that you can create. So there's an awful lot of flexibility, and unfortunately flexibility also means some complexity as well. So there is complexity associated to this. So if you clicking on these buttons shows you the underlying cost data associated to this cost. So this is my cost electricity. I can add another cost up here, and these are the costs which are used from this moment in time. So from 2015 it'll use this target rate, and from 2017 it'll use the data from this particular meter, or you can just put in a constant value, or you can put in whatever values you want within these calculations. You can either use them just as a value, 10.15, or you can use them from another calculation. And finally, we've got conversions. So conversions are when you're looking to set up data. So if I come to kilowatt hours, there'll be lots of conversions for kilowatt hours. Sorry, there we go. There it is. So all of these are pump per hours run conversions. So there's lots of them. So this is a times 10 multiplier. This is 0.75 kilowatt hours run. So basically this is for pumping metrics. So if you have a pump which is a 0.75 fixed nameplate rating, you can apply that conversion and that'll turn that into 0.75. So every hour's run it'll calculate it as 0.75 kilowatt hours, and you can have as many of these as you want. So you can see there's 3 pages here of those, so there's lots and lots of those. So effectively those are conversions. Now a lot of the time you won't be touching this, but it gives you an idea. And just to reiterate, you have an API link, so this is again telling you all the costs, all the conversions and the units that are applicable to your particular site. So those are the API links. If you want to build things into APIs using APIs, that's how you create the API links. So I'm going to call it a day on this particular video. It's 20 minutes now, so it's quite a long time. So thank you very much indeed.